Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to do some reading from the Modern Day Bookk, written by Susan MeeLing. That's me. So, basically page 166. So, let's see. Oh, the 10 plagues. Irony. So, when I was in Idaho in 2016, or no, I apologize, 2017, there were a few things that happened because I know it was 2017 because I had the Mazda hatchback for the rental car. So, with that, I'm just going to go through the different areas. I stayed in La Grande in Oregon at a hotel. Was it the Roadway Inn? And irony, isn't there the Texas Roadhouse? Anyway, I had stayed there after driving out from Lakewood. And when going from La Grande to, where was it? Moscow Cemetery, Moscow, Idaho, which is called the Silent Hill Cemetery. Got the Medal of Honor recipient there. And then on the way from that particular cemetery, all of a sudden, as I'm driving, there are all these bugs all over the road. Huge, huge bugs. Bigger than this thing from here to here. And they were bouncing off the tires. The road, where it usually has, kind of a silvery gray color, was as black as my dress. Just black. And just the only parts that were different colors were where the tires had driven over, and it was just bug guts. So gross. So, get over that. Get to the Oregon Cemetery, because according to what I found online, the easiest way was to go from that one to the Noble Medal of Honor recipient. Did the GPS thing, that whole Walla Walla thing that I already discussed in a prior video, if it loaded. And there were these really noisy neighbors I had that were in the hotel rooms underneath my hotel room on each side. And unlike in this apartment where I only have the noisy neighbors that are over there and then the one that's down there, it's a little boy. I mean, he's biologically an adult, but yeah, anyway, so I go and get those Medal of Honor recipients, despite the bugs. And then I already discussed I don't know. I went and got green in one of the Idaho cemeteries. Now that one was a little bit weird. I think that was in Boise, and it's funny because I think Hot CIA Guy is from Boise. Or at least he said something about Boise. But anyway, so I go to this one place, and I'm looking for Schoonover first. And Schoonover was supposed to be, from the information I found online, in the Field of Honor. Well, when I pulled into this one cemetery, there was this marker and it said Field of Honor dedicated in 2002. It's like, oh, this must be where Schoonover is, because Field of Honor. And so I walked back and forth, back and forth. I got there at like, that one, I think I got there like 8:30 in the morning. So I'm walking back and forth, back and forth. A female in a car later on starts driving towards the front, and she's got a green Ford Ranger that's kind of a little bit further back behind her. And now that I think about it, that female kind of looks like my dead ex-husband's sister, Susie Marie Nichols Lopez. Anyway, she had the bangs that Susie always had. Those like feather weird, I don't know what type of bangs they are. But anyway, she says, no, I don't know anything about anything. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. It is what it is. She drives off. Ford Ranger pulls up, and I'm like, hey, do you happen to know? And he said, well, actually, behind where you're at right now is the Veterans Cemetery, and maybe that's what you're looking for. I was like, okay. So, get in the Mazda hatchback, zoom up, pun intended, to the Veterans section. I'm like, hey, I'm looking for these guys. I'm doing this Medal of Honor art project, this whole thing. Female behind the counter says, we don't have those names here. And I look at my paperwork, and I'm like, oh, I must have written it down wrong. And I asked if there are any Medal of Honor recipients in the cemetery. She said yes. I was like, okay. And I did. I wound up writing them down backwards. Okay. But that's the first time I ever saw the symbols for Angel Moroni's church. Didn't know what they were. Figured when I got that taken care of back at the house in Lakewood, I'd be able to find out what that symbol was. And apparently it's for Angel Moroni's church, Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, founded by Reverend Joseph Smith. So, but anyway, I'll get to that later. So I get Fisher, I think it's Bernard Fisher, and another guy, I can't remember his name. Anyway, get their rubbings. Go to the other cemetery in Boise to find Green and Schoonover. Found Green instantly. I think actually if there was a camera inside of the rental car, it would have been, I know that mausoleum right there has Green. I know it. Didn't even have to look at the paper, just, I know it. See him right there. No problem. So I go to the directory, and lo and behold, found him. And did find Green at the exact mausoleum I thought he was at. Went over to try to find Schoonover. And every time I tried to find him, like, I got this little weird thing, because it was supposed to be a flat marker that I was looking for, but it was a rounded marker and standing up that had a name of Schoonover, but it wasn't the Medal of Honor recipient. So I'm going back and forth, back and forth. Several hours go by. Could not find him. And tried another section of looking. I couldn't find that Medal of Honor recipient. So it was, by that time, it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, ugh, I have been walking around outside, and it's a little bit warm. When I got to the car, the interior thing said it was like 119 degrees outside in the shade, because it had two different temperature markers. It had one for outside and one for inside. And I was like, oh, outside says 119. That's hot, but it's just kind of warm, so whatever. So went and got the other Medal of Honor recipients. Went and dropped down to Nevada. That was hot. There was only one Medal of Honor recipient I found online for the state of Nevada. Went and got, Henry Smith or something like that. And spoke with some guy there for a little while outside. And then I got a few of the other guys. I did stay in I think I stayed, or no. I went there, got the Medal of Honor recipient, and drove back to La Grande. Floorboard of the car started getting really, really hot, and I was just like, oof. My feet are actually burning. Trying to, like, not whatever. And then, like, there were solar fields on each side, like the solar panel farms. I was like, oof, that's hot. It's really hot. I mean, I thought that walking around was hot, but that is hot. Oof, acres and acres. Then there was this little miniature tornado. I was like, well, at least it's just a little one. It's not a big one. Just kind of. And then got back to the hotel, finished up a couple other Medal of Honor recipient rubbings, spoke with a couple of people in the different cemetery sections. One, when going through to find the Mason section, that Medal of Honor recipient was in a different area, and then spoke with one of the guys there. Then there was also the cemetery that I spoke with some guy. He was with the crew, and he had light blue eyes, and he had shorter hair. He said that he was a former volunteer firefighter. Kinda ironically looks like the male that's in that apartment or whatever. But anyway, about my height, just a little bit taller, broad shoulders. And there were two other males that were taller that were along with the company, but in a different truck. And there was a female who was listening to music that kind of looks like the brunette from over there. And she was just kind of listening to little earbud things. And I pointed out that there was a magpie that kind of followed around. I was like, look, a little magpie, little Maggie. And he was just like, oh, do you know this? I'm like, yeah, I know, it is what it is. Found, it was the cemetery for Benin, or Benian, and there were two other Medal of Honor recipients in that one. And so, find that guy, and I said, do you see something? Because we had talked for several hours, and he goes, what would I see? I said, it's the Medal of Honor marker. Have you never looked at that before? And he said, I have, kinda. And I was like, did you ever pay attention to what the Medal of Honor recipient marker looks like? And he goes, no. And he was kind of blinking his eyes weirdly. And I'm just like, I don't know what your issue is, but maybe you should get that checked out. Anyway, he looks at it and he goes, what's the big deal? It's like a star. I was like, well, it's not just a star. It is the Medal of Honor. Not just a star. But did you ever look at it? Because I've looked at it multiple times throughout my Medal of Honor art project. And the guy looks at me and he's like, well, what's the big deal? And I'm like, other than the fact that it's the Medal of Honor, the top award of the United States of America's Armed Forces, no other award topper, tippity top than that. If you look at it, do you know anything about spirituality since you said you did? And he goes, it's a star. I said, no, duh. But in specific, it is an inverted pentacle. Do you know what an inverted pentacle is? And he looks at me and he goes, no. I said, let me explain to you the difference between an inverted pentacle and a regular pentacle. A regular pentacle is air, fire, water, earth, and spirit in the different points, the 5 different points encompassed in a circle Ironically, I had made a plant version of that in my front yard in San Antonio around a crepe myrtle or a redbud tree. I can't remember which. Anyway, and I made the pentacle version, but it looked like the Star of Texas. But an inverted pentacle is an upside down pentacle, meaning the star points downward, and where many people misconstrue that as demonic because of lack of understanding or comprehension, it actually does represent air, fire, water, earth, and then the circle part of spirit within. It is the sign or the sigil where the individual looks within themselves to see the air that they breathe, the fire that makes their passion, the water of the blood flowing through their veins, the earth that is considered their body, and then the circle of the spirit, or the aura, you could say. Male kind of looked at me, he's like, that's a little beyond me. And it's like, yes, I can see that. I can see that's very beyond you. And not in a negative way, not in a patronizing way. Just, obviously, I wouldn't have had to go into that much detail if you had understood. And so, Medal of Honor recipients, they understand to appreciate each breath that they are able to take in the middle of what they are dealing with. The fire to, protecting themselves and others from. The water of the blood that is lost, either of those that are in the nearby vicinity and or theirs to keep others safe. The earth of their body and what they're running on. And then their spirit that continues through protecting the constitutional rights as well as their fellow brothers and sisters in that specific vicinity. Apparently that was a little bit lost on that male. So, but those who have earned a Medal of Honor and or earned a Medal of Freedom, I don't know if there's anybody who's earned both. But if there are, or is, that is of importance. I'm sure there is an understanding there. Not just the understanding of what it takes to actually earn the Medal of Honor. What it takes, every bit that is required. And so overcoming the adversary as best as possible. Keeping as many of the brothers and sisters safe that are in the unit, the battalion, the brigade, the base, etc. So after speaking with that male, went to a couple other places, got the other Medal of Honor recipients, made my way through Wyoming. I only found a total of 6 Medal of Honor recipients, but I could only find 5 because the other one for the guy in Grable didn't show up. And then I think there was one that didn't have a Medal of Honor marker. So I couldn't have that verification proof. Then I went down to Colorado, stayed in Brush, Colorado. And ironically, in Colorado, I had a lot of technology difficulties. Made sense that I had plenty of Wi-Fi in the Denver and Colorado Springs area. No denying that. So, but I was so excited because there was Dunkin' Donuts. Haven't had it in years. Anyway, so get the different Medal of Honor recipients. I went over to Utah, and Utah is pretty. Oh, that's such a pretty state. I actually wound up finding Angel Moroni's Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, founded by Reverend Joseph Smith out there. Apparently the headquarters. I didn't even realize it was the headquarters until I got back later on to Lakewood. And then later got to meet some elders from that church. Anyway, so I only found a total of 4 names in Utah, but only found 2 Medal of Honor recipients because I couldn't find the other ones. But drove back, and it was kind of weird because during the drive back from Utah to Colorado, there was this storm that just came out of the blue. And it was a torrential downpour. I mean, there were semi-truck drivers that pulled off to the side of the road, and you know those guys are used to driving all sorts of locations and all sorts of weather. I was just like, I'm not gonna wait for what that is coming. I don't think so. So I kept going. Made my way back to the hotel. By the time I got there, the bigger part of the storm was very much behind me, and I was like, yeah, you can stay back there. I don't want to have anything to do with that. Got to the hotel, relaxed a little bit. There were a few other issues, whatever. Went and finished up, and then it was the time for going to South Dakota and then North Dakota. And so I got ready, and I had no idea what Sturgis was. Admit this. I can make fun of myself for this. Because I saw a t-shirt for it in Montana, when I was in Montana in 2015. And I was just like, is that what they call a college out here? And I'm not trying to be rude to motorcyclists at all. I didn't know. I don't ride motorcycles. I didn't know that was a thing at all. And so, made sense in certain ways later on. So, I'm out in South Dakota. I was going to meet up with some friends of mine. And I figured, when I got the first Medal of Honor recipient, first few, I didn't get to go get Calamity Jane's rubbing for other reasons. But I go driving through, and I see a baby Missy, a little baby Missy with the mommy Missy, and I was so happy. It was just such a cute little Missy, and I just wanted to be so cute. I don't care that they are much bigger than I am. They are so cute. I've always wanted to be able to have like a papasan chair and just kind of sit in there. Antlers and be like, got your little nose. Who's your little puppy, Missy, Missy, Missy? I don't care. They're cute. Anyway, as I'm driving, there is this herd of, I don't know what they were. I have no idea. And after the incident in reference to the Idaho thing with the bugs, and then the year before at Rosh Harbor or Friday Harbor at the Afterglow Mausoleum with the sounds of the dogs coming out of the water, it was like, woo! I don't think so. I don't think so. Nope. I'm just gonna stop the car right here and let whatever, I don't know what they are. They didn't look like reindeer. I've never seen an animal like them. And then after, on top of that, whatever that animal was from Spokane, I don't know. I wasn't gonna get out of my car and be like, what are you? Because they were not cute. And I find the anglerfish cute. I think the anglerfish is just look at those teethy, so cute. Whatever those were, I don't know. I don't want to know. And it was just like, all right, you go do your, I don't know what you are. Like they had very weird hoofs. Their antlers were far different than any that I've ever seen, spiritually or physically, by the way. And I'm just like, okay, I don't know what you are. I don't want to know. And it was the year 2017, and the solar eclipse was about to happen. So it was like, all right then, I don't know. Whoa, okay. So then I get to the Sturgis area. I go to the Mason section in that cemetery to try to find that Medal of Honor recipient. And that particular cemetery is built into a mountain. And so I go, I turn left into the thing. I go right to go around the winding and stuff like that. And then there's this part where it was like a 45-degree angle upward. And I'm like, I think I need a dually truck to get up here, because like the Mazda hatchback, you could hear the me, and it was like, ooh, not trying to hurt the engine, but ooh. And so right when I'm like thinking about, well, do I push on or do I just kind of get out of here? This herd of, I don't know what they were, and they were not the same herd as whatever the prior herd was. And I was like, well, I am at the bottom of this totem pole food chain, because whatever those are, you have predators that are going after you, and I am much tinier than the baby in there. So I'm just gonna reverse this car and we'll back this car up. I have no idea how I didn't. I mean, I was not using the rear view camera. Like it was difficult. It was very difficult to make sure that I did not run over a marker, as well as like fall off the side of the cliff. And so I was like, okay, got backed out, turned around, drove out, spoke with the gas station attendant across the street. I think it was a Texaco. And the female there was just like, yeah, we didn't even know that there were any Medal of Honor recipients in Sturgis. And I was like, oh, yeah. Anyway, at that point, I'm like, okay, well, texting with, trying to get a hold of the individuals. They weren't available, okay. So I'm like, oh, there's a sign for a campground. I guess, and so people who have gone to motorcycle stuff, specifically Sturgis, probably know that there's more than one campground. I did not know that, so I see a sign for a campground. I'm like, I'll be able to find them. And then there was another sign for another campground, and another one. And I was like, so, yeah, no, I guess I'm just gonna keep on going, because that's a lot of campgrounds. That's a lot of campgrounds. So I'm gonna just, apparently it's a really big festival. Apparently there's like a whole bunch of motorcyclists that go to the same place. And apparently it was also the like 70th or 75th anniversary too. And it was like, oh, well, yeah, okay. So go to North Dakota, get those guys, stop in Minnesota for a hotel, sleep, and sleep very long. And then drop down the other side of South Dakota to pick up the other ones. And I didn't get all of the Medal of Honor recipients. I only found 8 online, but tried to get all of them. But I couldn't, because there were construction signs, and then there were other things in the way. I was like, okay, well, fine. And then there were ones where the GPS told me to turn into somebody's property. And I don't mean like there was a driveway. I mean, in the middle of a cornfield, the GPS was like, turn into the cornfields. And I'm like, no. This is my math. That's a farm. And on a farm, usually there are farmers, And usually those farmers, rightfully so, have firearms. And by technicalities, if I drive my car, despite that one having been a rental, into their property, they have the right to shoot me to protect their property. I don't think so. Not going to do that. Same thing happened in Idaho as well. And it was like, I don't think so. I'm not going to drive on somebody's crop field. I know better. I'm dumb. I'm not that dumb. So I did not, because I was not going to get in trouble for that. I don't think, nope. Not going to do it. Did not do it, because nope, I'm not getting in trouble for that. Whether they were out in the field or then later found it, I was not going to get in trouble for it. Nope. Nope. I don't care. So, then I went back to the hotel in Colorado, and then, there was the solar eclipse, so I drove out to Nebraska. And then there were these people who were sitting on top of the cemetery markers and eating food. I mean, I know that there are some people that are like, that's not a big deal, but they were literally, not only were they sitting on the markers, but they were using the other markers as picnic tables. And I was like, despite whether or not it's a solar eclipse, you don't do that. Like, I know I sat on the chairs in the Afterglow mausoleum. That's very different. They're literally chairs. Those cherubim ones were literally sitting on like standard markers, like little flat, and I'm just like, what is wrong with you? They were encouraging their children to do that, and it's like, what is wrong with you? And they were, it was gross. It pissed me off so bad, number one, because I couldn't find Allsworth. I was trying to find that Medal of Honor recipient, and I couldn't find him, and I was pissy because they had a computer tower type of directory, and the plastic screen that was going up and down just wouldn't let me get to the point. And I was like, I'm not going to get my hand decapitated or dehanditated or whatever the word is to try to like punch in the name. And so I couldn't find the name, and so I just walked back and forth like I have done, trying to find the Medal of Honor guy. Couldn't find the Medal of Honor guy. There were two females across the street at like the little vet clinic. I don't know what they were doing while I was at the directory thing. Like, what the fuck? Anyway, ever. People have said much worse at younger ages. Anyway, so waited for the solar eclipse, looking at the people that should not have been there, like at all. I had flat out told my now ex-boyfriend, I had told people that I've known in that time, as well as I told my son, there is only one person, meaning me, who should be in that cemetery, because if anybody else is in there, there's a problem. At most, there should be no more than 3 people, including me, and those people would be visiting their family members and then out. There should not be anybody else. Well, on my way into Nebraska, there was this huge rolling fog. I was like, okay. Came out of the blue, and I'm like, all right, this is a little weird. I mean, it was just a clear night sky, everything was clear, and then boom, this huge thing of fog, and I'm like, okay, whatever, fine. That's different. There was a car in front of me that, like, when you get to a wall of fog, like, you don't slam on your brakes, you dumb blonde. Because she was a blonde. And so I was like, okay, whatever, in a white car. And so there were all those people who were sitting on cemetery markers, eating food. off of the cemetery markers. Have you ever heard of Persephone and Demeter? Like, I mean, I know there are people who have had to have heard about Demeter and Persephone. And so it's just one of those, okay, whatever, to each their own. You should not be here. Like, none of you should be here. I realize now those were cherubim. I get that. But those people were literally sitting on cemetery markers, eating off of cemetery markers. And it's like, not only do you not have any respect for the dead, but you're eating like the demonic ones. Not saying that the ones that are in that cemetery, as far as the martyr, but like it was a solar eclipse. I can't be the only person who knows about certain things when it comes to the solar eclipse and the spiritual aspects of. And it was like, what is wrong with you people? I mean, like, seriously. I also comprehend there were some compassionate, honorable, and righteous ones in there, but those ones I don't remember seeing sitting on the cemetery markers and eating food off of another cemetery marker. It was like, ugh, go away. And so I didn't even stay for the whole solar eclipse. I was planning on staying for the whole solar eclipse, meaning the beginning portion, the full solar eclipse, and then the final portion. I was like, no, you have pissed me off too much. The fact that you have infuriated me, I am not willing to stay. I wanted to check out a place that had stromboli. I was so excited to be able to do that. I didn't get to because of those people in cemetery pissing me off. But it was cool. I did take some pictures with a fisheye camera, as well as I ordered the fisheye camera off of Amazon, and I don't know where the little chippy thing went. And then I also took pictures with my camera, but I don't know where that chippy thing went. And yeah, but I'm also not willing to explain what's actually in those pictures that I know did show up, because they're my pictures. And if you want those answers, that would mean you'd have to let me look at them. And I know what's in there. It's kind of like the dot pictures that I recently posted in reference to the old JBSA quadrangle cemetery. Not gonna say nothing, none of your business. And so, but don't go assume stuff. That'd be dumb. Than certain things. Anyway, so went back to the hotel in Colorado, returned back. Then, the following year was 2018, and did the drop-offs for Colorado and Wyoming and Utah and all that stuff. And I was supposed to find 42 Medal of Honor recipients. I only found 19 of 42. And I did wind up driving out to Illinois to see if I could find, because I had the time. And I didn't remember anything. And so I tried to find the house. Couldn't. I mean, the GPS said I found the house, and then nothing looked familiar. So I left. I didn't know who I could ask, because how am I going to walk up to somebody's house and be like, did you live here at this time? And I mean, yeah, I could have, but like, wasn't gonna. Just after what happened in Iowa and what happened in the prior year, I was too infuriated and upset and disgusted still, as far as the solar eclipse happened. So to and through Montana, and because that's how you had to travel to go. And I stopped at, so on the way out, I stopped for the drop-offs in, whatchamacallit, 2018. For the drop-offs, I stopped in Montana. I was supposed to be there for 3 days so I could go to the Vortex for 3 days, and nothing on the internet let me know that there was going to be a 4th of July celebration, so I only got to go to the Vortex 1 day instead of the 3 days that I had planned. Then on the way back, the people that were in the hotel room next to mine were so obnoxious and loud that they annoyed me, and I left that night. Drove all the way through to Spokane, wound up getting a hotel room because of a very nice female, paying essentially the price that I paid for, but anyway, for the other. Anyway, got a little bit of sleep, got back to Washington State, and then a whole bunch of problems. And so, that's the end of that.